The true story is what we need to wake up to. Slavery worked.
You know, Black Lives Matter should be focusing on the fact that African Americans in this country and Africans around the world are as talented and should be as equal and should be able to live their lives free in the manner in which they choose to live it. They live
For those that are ready, let's begin the conversation. So I'm trying to, I got a couple of questions that I really want to ask. And since the Black Lives Matter piece is the main thing that is happening right now, the main banner that is being placed upon things, I just want to know from each of you what you believe Black Lives Matter means to you, and where do you see this activity or movement going?
I'm honored to be a part of this, honored to be a part of anything that involves the conversation of our state. Black Lives Matter, I guess, textually can serve as a social and political movement geared to address injustices against the Black community, namely police brutality, et cetera, et cetera. But what it means to me depends on the day of the week. When I wake up one day, Black Lives Matter means just what I said, a movement. The next day, because a good, if not the majority of my time is spent with children, and is spent with children who have become the face of this present movement. Young Black men, young Black women, because I'm a high school teacher, and how they have become a driving force behind what's been going on lately. And then another day, it makes me reference our parents or our mothers or our aunts or our people who have come before us. So it's eclectic in its way, because it's about time, and I get enthralled and I get inspired by what I'm seeing, but it's over time because it's too late. George Floyd's tragic death is just a name on this list. So it's just really a mix of a lot of things for me. But what it will always mean is being consciously cautious. I talk to my boys all the time. Now, we all have children, but my sons are in the mix of what's being targeted. And I have a 20-year-old, I have a 17-year-old in a couple of weeks, and a 14-year-old. And what warms my heart, but at the same time heightens my blood pressure, is when I hear their conversations through the vents in my apartment. I mean, these boys are up at night talking about, yo, man, this is effed up, man. We got to do something, man. This is that. They're talking about world stuff. They're talking about political stuff. They're talking about history. They're talking about all these kinds of things. And then I'm loving it. It's making me channel. And go back when I was in college and all those kinds of things. And then once they come out and their veins are popping out their necks and their antennas are up and they're really, really riled up, I'm like, okay, I got you. Matter of fact, if I had more energy, I'd be out there with you. But you have to keep in mind that, like the other people who you may be watching on TV, or unlike the other people you may be watching on TV, you still got a little bit to hang your hat on in terms of your future. I don't want you to blow it. So I'm trying to get them politically acclimated to what's going on, but I don't want to dim the fire that's burgeoning within them. So it's dichotomous for me. I mean, I'm those people who know me, especially the 20-something-year-old Mark, I was singing that song we were singing in the preliminary conversation. I was radical as hell in college. I was off the chain. And that speaks to what we had discussed earlier as well. The fact that all three of us grew up together, we have different walks, way different walks. in a lot of the things that you've experienced, Travis, in your interaction with not only your interaction, your existence of being a Black man in your walk. My existence of being a Black man in my walk and Keith's, they're different. They're totally different, and in a lot of ways. And I channel all of that when I see the phrase, when I look at the poster that's in my kitchen, I'm in my dining room rather, Black Lives Matter. My life, the people who've raised us, our lives have always mattered, but I don't know if they've mattered any more than they do today. So when that phrase is coined, it takes on a whole different ballgame for me.
Same question. What does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Thank you again. I'm honored as well to be here. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement to me is one that is sort of broadening, you know, real time, right? Because to me, it's still intended to be about police brutality and about the way we're treated by police officers. But we know that implicit biases and prejudices by non-whites, by whites against non-whites are there. And we know that racism, and again, how do you define racism? Racism really is those that have the authority that are blocking, denying, or preventing forward movement of non-whites. And now racism and prejudice, the words have sort of blended together. Oh, you say something that maybe is toward your own preservation, and then it sounds like it's racist, and it gets all confusing. But for me, Black Lives Matter really is about that movement for the police. However, it is have such a rippling effect that it's actually causing white folks to look inward and look at themselves and say, hey, you know, we talk about privilege, which is most people like question is really, can they change the fact that they're privileged? No, but they can acknowledge the fact that if this was an even swap and we had two similar resumes, the white guy would most likely get the job. Why? Because it makes the hirer more comfortable for some reason. And it's almost an abstract thing where they can't really explain it. They just, you know what, I really liked him. And that's allowed when you're hiring people. But the problem is, you know, we don't get a fair chance. So like Mark stated earlier, the three of us grew up together, but you know, we each are affected differently by it. You know, we grew up in an urban environment in New Jersey, one of the toughest high schools on the planet, infamous for its movie. And you remember those times when you say, okay, I need to do something. So my whole goal was like, I need to do better. I need to get out. I need to make a better life for me, right? My mother worked really hard. My mother was a school teacher. My father worked menial jobs. Right? You're thinking, okay, I got to do better. Okay. Let me give you a true story here to kind of illustrate this. When I was choosing college, I had the opportunity to go to an HBCU and I had the opportunity to go to Rutgers University. Rutgers University had 48,000 students and a 10% minority rate. Minority rate, this is an old term, right? But it was Black and Hispanics. And I chose Rutgers because I went to a Black high school. I wanted the skill set to go and work with the white man. That's what my thought was back then. And I said, I need to be able to compete. If I go to a Black college, I'm good at that, you know, but what am I going to do when I get out in the real world? And that was my thought process then. Even today, as I raise my children, I have three, one in college, one in high school, one in middle school, and my son is in high school, and I'm worried right now, he's right at that age where he could get, you know, just kind of categorized, you know, and get and be a victim here of this police brutality. You know, my kid's a great kid. He stays in the house. He's not on the streets. He wouldn't even know what to do in the streets. But Cops don't know that. So, my teaching to the children is that, I need you to be better. You got to be better. You have to be better because your opportunities are going to be less. And my oldest daughter and I, we had a conversation recently, and she was really upset about something, and it really had started with hair, taking care of her hair, and just being a Black woman. And she was just upset about a lot of stuff. And I said, look, you're in the fourth quadrant, right? It's white men, white women, Black men, and then Black women in society. And so you have the opportunity that most Black women before you didn't. You could rise above all that. But your road is the hardest. You're a woman and you're Black, so you have a double whammy, and I need you to be twice as good. And she didn't really like that. She was like, I can't, how fair, what kind of hand is that? That's the way it is. So when I think of Black Lives Matter for that specific question, I think about all of the microaggressions that happen along the way for our lives, things that you never even think about, these things that we don't talk about. We can talk about them in the barbershop, but we don't talk about them when we go to work. Right? We don't talk about when we go to work, when people ask you about your dress, your clothes, your religion, your music, in a way where they pose it as a curious question, right? We can laugh about, hey, don't touch a Black woman's hair, but I mean, there's some serious ignorance that happens there where you don't even want to respect the culture, but then there's those that want to adopt the culture fully. Right, and then they're seen by others as, hey, what's wrong with you? You're adopting the culture. You're trying to be Black. Or there's a lot of Black people who learn the King's English, right? Hang out with non-white Black people, and then it's like, yo, what's wrong with you? You're trying to be white. So I say all that to say that, Black Lives Matter should be focusing on the fact that African Americans in this country and Africans around the world are as talented and should be as equal and should be able to live their lives free in the manner in which they choose to live it, in the religion they choose to live it, in the culture they choose to live it. And we don't want anything from anybody in terms of, we don't want to take something from you. We just want to sit at the table. So when I think of Black Lives Matter, I ask, what are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve police brutality? Are we trying to solve implicit bias? Are we trying to solve racism in the workplace? Are we trying to solve it all? Will we see it? Can we see it? What's the goal? Who's the leaders? There's so many questions that come up for me when you ask that question. And so that's kind of a long answer to, it means everything to me, but specifically started with police brutality.
And one of the follow-up questions that I sort of been posing to people as of late with regards to the BLM movement, as an immediate response that we've gotten from society at large, was the acknowledgement that at least they could start making some strides to do simple things like remove Confederate statues and symbols and flags. And even Mississippi has just made this, move where they're going to remove the Confederate symbol from their state flag. There's been acknowledgement with regards to particular songs that have a racist undertone or they originated in an effort to perpetuate the racist stereotypes of people of color. And every company across the globe has Black Lives Matter, across their banner. If they, at least for the first couple of weeks they did. Some have essentially rolled that back and they don't see it. But the week or two right after, the George Floyd incident, every company posted, Black Lives Matter across their websites. And the question I really have now is that enough? Because the reason I ask that is because I'm getting the sense that maybe they're trying to pacify and say, hey, we made We've taken down Confederate flags and statues, and we at Disney, we've changed the music to Splash Mountain, and now we're going to do The Princess and the Frog. And, you know, we've put Black Lives Matter on our banner for a number of weeks and months, and we put out these official statements on our websites, and we're against racism at our company. Is that, and so simply the question is, for you guys, is that enough?
Is it anything? ELE is already in place, right? It's already the law. All right, so for a company to, you know, if you had wrongful termination or you had some kind of discriminating case, I mean, most companies have attorneys set up to kind of fight that, and they have HR departments set up to kind of prevent that. So the fact that they made a public statement that said Black Lives Matter is really only because All Lives Matter said, hey, you know, and there was a confusion about that. I mean, you ask Siri what, you say, hey, Siri, All Lives Matter. And then she'll say, oh, that's a typical response from Black Lives Matter. And then you say, hey, Siri, does Black Lives Matter? And she'll say, of course they do. That's somebody at Apple wrote that, right? Because they want to be on the right side of history. But no, that's not enough. And the question is, what are we asking for, right? But that's not, of course, that's not enough. What I want is for us to not be killed in the streets, for us to have equal opportunity, and for us to get those promotions and business loans and really, and Mark's a teacher, can tell you way better than me, is get that focus on funding for the school systems for the inner cities, like Baltimore, greater Baltimore area, like Chicago, like New Jersey, and I can go through all the cities, Philadelphia, Charlotte, LA, New York. Schools, you know, and we're from Paterson, New Jersey. You know, the school system there is not as strong as it should be. And I'll say that that's an understatement, right? So we can get money into those school systems based on the fact that there is a systemic problem that we identify, and we have to go all the way back to where it begins. And the parents don't have the resources to put their children through the same path that white parents have to put their children through. So, yeah, I mean, no, it's not enough, but I think we need to define what we're looking for.
This very, very, very loud social scream that's coming out of our communities wakes people up enough to see what really has happened and what really is happening. We need to stop accepting, I get, and I don't really know if it has everything to do with the fact that I'm an English teacher or something to do with the fact, but I get into semantics. I don't even say the word history anymore, because that's his story. The true story is what we need to wake up to. Slavery worked. Slavery was not a brutal, inhumane, physical degradation of a people. Slavery was a well-calculated, blueprinted plan to wipe us out. What's pissed them off is that we're still here. So over the annals of time, they've pacified us with a lot of things. Some landmark decisions, Brown versus Board of Ed, some life-changing kinds of legislation. They think so much of us is that the voting rights bill is not a bill, it's an act. Acts expire. We have never been respected in this country. And until we continue to scream as loud as we scream and bite the country in the right ass, and the right ass is the ass of money. Capitalism, Karl Marx said it, capitalism will never work if you continue to try to solve the problems with programs on the inner. And so they decided, okay, this capitalism is gonna work if we don't have the niggas, but the niggas won't go away. So if the niggas gonna be here, we gotta make sure we do things to shut them up, to make them think that they've made strides when they're actually taking steps backwards. things like welfare, things like WIC, things like Section 8, all these social reform programs were built to continue what slavery intended to do. And years and years and years, and people that we know, people in our family have taken advantage of these programs. And we know, look, I worked in Alabama projects for 6 years. What do you think you see when you walk into a typical apartment in Alabama project? A 65-inch television, a PlayStation, an Xbox, and every type of expensive electronic equipment you can find. But their rent is $8. Who wants to leave that? You deal with a couple roaches. You deal with a couple rats. Who's walking out of that? Who's walking out of systemic dependency? I don't know if any of you heard, but we grew up with people who lived in CCP in Alabama. Some of them were fighting the demolishment of those projects. They were fighting it. We want to stay here. Some of them I know personally. Yeah. So the assimilated bitch slap that white America has done on Black people, hopefully has finally healed. And we can wake up and see the systemic thing that they're doing. So no, Travis, every single company you can think of has made a statement toward the Black Lives Matter movement. In addition to the banners, I'm on freaking Fire Stick before you even flick on a movie. They matter to us. Or you see some fists come through before the movie starts to play. It's insulting, some of it. So no, it's not enough. I understand it because I understand where I am. But what we have to do is take this moment and really, 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 really make a dent in the way that we are perceived, not only nationally and domestically, but globally. And the only way we're gonna make a real change, because a lot of this is pacification, a lot of it is band-aided. The only way we're gonna make a real change is if we hit white America in their capital. And until we do that, and until we galvanize together and make a movement with that, this too shall pass.